This episode of Coffee Talk is brought to you by Burden Accountants and Advisors.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Coffee Talks. I'm very happy about our guest today, Joe Brancato, who is the co-managing principal and also the co-chairman of Gensler Architecture. For the noobs out there who haven't heard of Gensler, well, they're the premier commercial architects. They do towers like the Shanghai Tower, which at one point was the tallest building in the world for a short minute. But they are really known for doing commercial interiors for Fortune 500 companies like Verizon and Apple, as well as ground up buildings. Joe happens to be a Terp from the University of Maryland, so we're going to take it easy on him today. No, we're not. Joe, let's get right into it. Gensler's bread and butter is designing commercial office space. My guess is that in the near future, you guys are going to have your hands full because a lot of your clients are going to need to redesign their offices. Is that the case right now?
Yes, it is, Amir. As a matter of fact, it's been the case for a little bit. Particularly, our workplace consulting group has been extremely busy for the last year. You know, everybody trying to figure out, so many companies trying to figure out, what do I do with my space? It's changing. I don't know what to do. How do I get people back to the office? You know, what is really going to be necessary in a workplace? And so we've been working with our clients to reimagine their workplace. And you know, one thing we've learned is that one size doesn't fit all.
I'd love to hear some of the solutions that you guys have for your bigger clients.
Yeah, so you know, we have a consulting group, and they're made up of strategists, designers, architects, anthropologists, and they'll work with our design teams to really understand the client's needs. But we're working with them right now where we're trying to help them understand what is changing. What should I do? Should I just sit and wait until this all clears and then do something? Or should we start to think a little bit about what we want to do? They're not waiting. We suggest not to wait too long because you may miss out on these and an opportunity for your real estate, but also the physical environment's what people will come back to. We've got to create the proper types of spaces for people to come back to. Now, we've heard a lot, right? We've heard a lot about the touchless environment, you know, a lot about technology integration and leveraging technology and how that plays out in a workplace. You know, but what really sticks? And so, you know, being adaptable, being flexible, creating an environment that's adaptable and flexible. We've come up with something that's a concept on a morphable building, which I could talk to you about later. But we want adaptability. The space is going to evolve over time.
Explain that in like basic terms. So like when you say that you want to be able to change the interior like seamlessly, does that mean walls on wheels or like no permanent sort of structures inside?
There will be some permanent structures because certain things may not change at all ever, but most could and will. And so you're absolutely right. We're untethered for a long time from our desks because of technology. We can move around. We can work in many different places. That's the way we are right now. Many people working from home or different spots, third places, as well as their office. So the power can be, we can have charging stations, right? That we could hook into when we need the power. We have Wi-Fi. We can have furniture that's easily movable. It can be on wheels. There's furniture products out there that are stackable. You could have acoustical panels that you can put in, or you could put those markable surfaces in. The lighting, when I say what needs to be flexible, is really the infrastructure. The power stations need to be in certain areas. The lighting should be in a pattern that is incredibly flexible, so that if I have workstations or offices in one location, it may be easy to switch them out without having to change the lighting or the air conditioning or the sprinkler system, right? The sprinkler location. So what's incredibly important is creating flexibility in your infrastructure so that you can make changes easily.
And you guys did a survey, and apparently most of your people did want to come back because they wanted to have that collaboration feel to it, which I would think in a sort of a creative setting, like an architectural shop, you would want that. But that sort of doesn't jive with a lot of the other surveys that are out there that say that, look, we've learned that we can work a lot better and more efficiently and be more productive when we're not working in an office. That, obviously the whole hybrid thing will come back to a degree, but there's going to be a big chunk of office space that's just not, that we're going to have to possibly think of other uses for it.
Right. You bring up a great point. Look, many surveys are people self-reporting, right? You're not talking to the leaders of the office or the managers or somebody that has P&L responsibility or so, but and it's kind of interesting what's coming back. I was on a call earlier in the day with ULI, one of the product council I'm with, and it was really interesting because they were talking about some of the people, many people may not want to come back, but people are being burnt. They're getting burned out on their work. Mm-hmm. So they may be working harder or working different hours, but they're getting burnt out on work. There's more mental health issues out there right now, including for office workers. Mm-hmm. And so much of your social network happens in the office. Mm-hmm. You can imagine, people coming out of school or even just young talent, they need mentors. Mm-hmm. There's social networks at work. That's where they meet people. They do things. They don't have that now if they're not there and they're not there together. The other thing I've been hearing, and this is something that a senior leader came to me and said, I don't know, it's really hard to manage because I can't manage when I need a few people here together where they're working in a team and they could work remotely, but they're not together. And what he said to me was really interesting. He said, I don't think there's the ownership of the projects anymore. Mm-hmm. If you're sitting in your living room, mm-hmm. because you could just shut it down. Somebody else may get it done, but there's not that ownership, that loyalty to each other when we're working in a team as much as when we are together and we see each other face to face.
But you mentioned earlier that you guys actually have an anthropologist that goes to the meetings with you guys, and he's in your office. I'm really curious to know, like, what kind of feedback and what kind of things he's sharing with your clients and with you guys.
So we're trying to understand patterns, movement through space, how people are working. We have to dig deeper, and we have a variety of different types of people working. Right now, we have a practice called Intelligent Places that started before the pandemic, and it really is, how are we leveraging data to improve how space is being utilized? Initially it started out, by using the sensor data and customizing environments for people as they come in the office. They know it's me, and they automatically adjust the air conditioning or the shades at certain times of the day and the way I like it, right? But then it started leveraging it to figure out, how do we utilize our space better, right? And that data was coming off. And now we're also looking at it to, how do we create a better user experience in the space? Because that's what we need. We need to create great experience, better human experiences in our space, so people want to be here and utilize space. I come back to the office. But that happens, it happens by really understanding why is one space, one conference, 6-person conference room on one side of the floor being used much more than the same conference room on another side of the floor? What's adjacent to it? And the anthropologists and these type of consultants are able to really start to think about different approaches, or why. What's the reasoning behind this, so that we can make adjustments. I believe, in buildings, you have property managers, right? They're there all the time. They're checking the property to make sure the infrastructure works, to make sure the filters in the air conditioners are changed every month, to make sure that the plumbing is working, to make sure that security on the ground floor works. Well, I believe that because business will change and people, different types of hybrid situations occurring in different offices, I believe we're going to be able to, through intelligent places, be able to work with our clients on an ongoing basis and make those quick modifications to enable better user experience, to be able to improve utilization, and to also customize based on the data we're getting. So well, you have a property manager, I think you're going to have a workplace experience manager. And I can tell you, some of our clients have started. Morgan Stanley has hired an experience manager in their real estate group because they realize this is good. This is incredibly important as they fight to get to talent and to hire great talent and retain the talent. So I think that's going to be a different.
They've hired their own anthropologist, basically. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it was an anthropologist. It's a experience manager.
That sounds like a very 21st century position, but we did our own surveys with our own employees and stuff. And I think a lot of people felt comfortable coming back in some sort of a hybrid situation. But they also wanted everybody else to be vaccinated. I mean, do you have to deal, as an architect, do you have to deal with those situations, or those are like usually left with the, to the companies to decide and figure out how they should, manage that?
Yeah, that's left to the companies and how they want to operate and what the protocols need to be, and they vary. So, I think that it's interesting. You bring up a very.
Do you have a place for unvaccinated? Do some companies have a place that's like set for unvaccinated people and a place for vaccinated? Have you seen anything like that?
Well, no, I have not seen that. But what I have seen is more and more companies saying that, if you're going to come into the office, you need to be vaccinated because we want to protect our people that are here. I see companies saying, giving people choice on when they will be in the office and not. And they may say, okay, if you're not planning to be in the office a minimum of 3 days a week, you're going to share your workstation or your office. Right. So if you come 3 days or more, you'll have your own office, your own workstation, whatever it may be. And so that's starting to happen. You asked a question earlier, with people with this hybrid model, people working from home, will we need less office space? And I'm surprised to see that it's not as much. There's not as big of a reduction in office space for the most part as I had initially anticipated. You'll see portfolios be reduced by a 10% or 15% when I thought it would have been 40 or 50%. And part of the reason is that they do plan to have more people coming back. What's happening now is you have people coming back. There's a hybrid, and you give people choice, so they could. But everybody's choosing to come back Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, not on Monday and Friday. So now you have everybody in. So you need all the space because they're all coming in on the same day.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. But the other thing we are seeing is that there is an increase in the collaborative spaces and the amenity spaces that bring people together and provide the types of spaces and the types of tools that they don't have at home. They don't have access to at home.
Right.
And so the amenity spaces seem to be growing. So I guess in answer to that earlier question, there's a reduction, but it's not as big as we initially thought. What we are seeing, though, and this is happening, and we created this tool to support this, is that we see a flight to quality, better buildings, more renovated buildings. People are going because better infrastructure, better light, just better quality, better service. The Class B office buildings, Class C office buildings, many of them are going to have a very difficult time because part of the demand has been reduced. And we've created a tool for an office to residential conversion tool that's been set up. We've loaded a lot of information and data in, and created a series of algorithms so that we can evaluate a building very quickly and a very, very high level to give it a score. And that score, if it's above a certain number, if it's above 82, there's a good chance it could work for residents.
For me? So you're saying that you have this tool that looks at a Class C building, say on 29th Street, and it's an old garment building, and you guys are able to look at that building and assess that based on where the columns are and the width of the building and where the windows are, this kind of residential use could come out of it. That's basically what you're
right. There's a series of criteria that's set in there that and we evaluate it and load in information that's easy to gather, whether we see it visually or we gather it off of existing information. Mm-hmm. We could load it in and it'll come out with a score. Right. And you're exactly right. And that will tell you that, look, anything over this 82 is probably pretty good, has good bones and the right thing to study it further for conversion from office to resi. Anything below, don't spend too much time on.
What would be a bad commercial and be a good residential? What are the key elements of that?
Yeah. So a bad commercial office building are these lower slab to slab heights, which are very high ceiling heights for residential. So that you would probably never, if you were building a new residential building, you wouldn't build a 10-foot ceiling height for a residential unit. It'd probably be 8 feet. But here you have 11 foot, you take out a foot for some structure, for some infrastructure, and then you get a 10-foot ceiling. That's great. You would never have that. If you have for these older buildings, you used to have a center core, the core of the building, the elevators, the core bathroom. So we're right in the center of the building. And then you'd have a dimension from the core to the window, maybe 35, 40 feet. Mm-hmm. Well, today's office buildings, in many cases, you like to have a little deeper office space because it makes it much more efficient. And you have bigger floor plates that people are more connected. Right. Well, a 35-foot core to window depth is a very good depth for a residential unit. Right. So there's these other, and I said the elevators, more elevators in a commercial office building than needed in a residential building. So we could use those openings for shafts that are necessary.
Let's say 20% of office space in New York City was just not going to come back. No matter how you cut it, 20% of the people are not going to come back. There's not going to be use for that space. That's in Manhattan, that would be roughly around 100 million square feet, which is a huge amount of space. What are some of the other uses that people could have for office space outside of residential use? What are other uses that we could come up with?
Yeah, I mean, hotel, we don't need, it seems like we're actually cutting back on business hotels, but who knows, that may shift and change later on. But some of these older office buildings, like I said, the dimensions, may the floor plate sizes and the dimension core to window may make a good hotel. Mm-hmm. You may be able to look at some of these buildings could be for academic buildings. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think that we're going to see more of that. We've been studying also not just the office buildings, Amir, but looking at what do you do with Governor Murphy over in New Jersey calls them stranded assets. As a matter of fact, he has a program right now where they're giving out grants to municipalities that apply, that have stranded assets like retail malls. Mm-hmm. that are underutilized or empty, and trying to figure out what else do you put there. And we've really looked at different types of uses to create more of a community, a mixed use community. And so some of these old department stores can be converted to medical facilities. The parking lots, you need more. You don't need as much parking if you put some residential in the area in the parking lot. So you could use some of that parking for
This
Korangy.
this is interesting because you've gone publicly. You've said something that's super contrarian right now, which is that retail is it's about to it's about to see its heyday in the near future. I really I didn't want to cut you off, but I really do want you to explain why you think retail is going to have a big comeback.
No, I don't know that it's going to have a big comeback, but it's certainly not dead. Bricks and mortar are not dead. And when you start to look at some of these retail malls in New Jersey, you can understand why Governor Murphy's putting some money there, because there's so many retail malls and it's been over retailed. So, but so if you start to put some of these other uses and create traffic, foot traffic, the remainder that's left of those facilities could be excellent retail. And so I don't think retail's dead, but there's areas in our country that are over retailed, and New Jersey's one of those areas. Right. And so what do you do with it? So I do think that whether it's out in a retail mall or if it's here in New York City, where we have some older Class B or C office buildings that may need to change use, I do believe that there's this 20-minute city that becomes a more livable city, a city that really thinks about people in close proximity to make things convenient. So if we start to convert some of these office buildings, and they will start to get converted, Resi's one approach, you will have live, work, play, be entertained within 20 minutes of a walk or bicycle ride. Very convenient, right? You want things that are convenient. And I do think that, we've done okay here in New York, but there's many cities that, they have their central business district. It closes down at the end at 5:30, the way downtown was many years ago, right? Before we started adding Resi and doing those conversions. And I really do think that we're going to start to see more of a better quality of life. In the beginning of the pandemic, I talked about architecture of optimism. And at the time when nobody was like everybody, it was the world was crashing. Yeah. And I talked about an architecture of optimism. And today, I think we are on a track for an architecture of optimism. Not only the technology and the way we're able to leverage the technology in our spaces, in our buildings, that push the acceleration of touchless environments, of maybe these shacks that we have in our streets that took over a lane, for the rest. Well, maybe that'll be done in a nicer way and give it back to people instead of cars. I do see a few more places that's like right outside of One Vanderbilt, where we have a plaza, used to be cars and now it's pedestrians and places to sit, more spaces. So I do believe that we're getting maybe these buildings that are going to provide better indoor air quality, better infrastructure. So I still believe there's an architecture of optimism that has started and is going to continue as we move forward.
I feel like you have people in the industry and the big landlords, and of course like the big firms like yours. You guys are like really pushing this thing to stay active and be the brick and mortar. That I feel like there's some denial here. Do you feel like there's some denial with the people within the industry, because it's your bread and butter at the end of the day? So you're like, this better work, and I have 100% faith in it will. Call me later if it doesn't.
Yeah, I'm sure that. We could believe that and think that, but we are human beings. We could turn a lot over to, we're not robots, we're not avatars. We do need to be connected with people. I do believe that human connection is something that we cannot undervalue. And so I'm not saying office buildings are going to come back though better, stronger. I can't predict that, but I can say that human connection is incredibly important.
With more climate changes, coming, that's inevitable. You're seeing record after in California. Every year there seems to be a record fire. There is more rain than ever before, and that poured on Central Park this past year than ever before. And I feel like a lot of these cities, they're over 100 years old for the most part, and they are not really able to deal with these changes. I mean, I'm sure you guys are seeing that. You're coming up with solutions for it. What can be done? If, for example, if somebody's building a new tower in downtown, what are the things that they have to consider when they're building something downtown?
Yeah. Well, trying to leverage the materials that are going to be able to reduce the amount, the materials in the systems, or reduce the amount of energy necessary. We're hearing a lot now about electric buildings. So maybe coming off of fossil fuel as much as they can. We're hearing, certain things, in other areas, passive designing, so you have the proper shading on the south, and it just really starting to take a good look at that. My sense is that we are, and so many of the products are progressing and starting to progress a lot faster in terms of how they're being manufactured. And we do have
like concrete and steel,
right?
And all of that.
Yes,
stuff.
Exactly. I mean, like mass timber. We've worked with Sidewalk Labs in Toronto on the site that they were thinking of developing up there. And we work with them very closely in mass timber. We had to study, how do there's mass timber buildings that are 4, 5, 6, maybe even up to 10 stories, but how can we get a 25-story tower out of mass timber? We studied that. We worked very closely with them, the manufacturers. We pushed it and we figured a way to do it. I mean, the problem with a 25-story tower for mass timber is that it's too light. It could blow over, right? So How do you support it, anchor it, right? So there's things, that's where we're pressing. There's areas that we can do, we can tie in here in terms of systems and infrastructure. But I can tell you, the building that you don't knock down is the most sustainable.
Right.
And that's why I'm really interested in working on these stranded assets, or the conversion of office to resi or office to something. Because if we're not knocking it down, we're saving a lot of energy. We're not creating additional embedded carbon in the environment. So I really think that if we can save, even if we save 50% of the structure, that's a very sustainable move. So much has progressed, whether it's the facade of a building, the curtain wall of a building, and being able to change during the day in terms of the level of shading on the facade. I'm not talking about the window treatment inside that. The facades have come alive. The projection on facades or on surfaces with digital design to create different moods, just at a click of the mouse. Wow. To change. I want to be this room. I feel like I want to be in the rainforest today, yeah. Right? And you could change it. We're starting to see that quite a bit on these different surfaces. So technology and digital design to create different experiences in rooms.
And the thing you're talking about is View, right? The name of the company is called View, the glass that.
Well, the View glass, exactly. The View glass, exactly right. You're right, and we've been speaking with them, about that, and I think they have a really great product. I think it
seems amazing, the fact that like all your windows can become surfaces, like you said, that can be used for either projecting different stuff or being able to actually use as a surface. I thought that would be
amazing, right? You could put information on there, you could advertise, you could do all kinds of things there, right? But I also, even small things, small products, lighting products, how we're leveraging, the lighting to clean surfaces, right? These are type of things that are starting to really progress. How we're leveraging, to reduce the amount of energy that we're using. From our mechanical systems. The air filtration systems are growing. I'm dealing, this company called Atmos Air. We actually put it in here, where it's helping clean the air, and make it healthier. They say, it's like, how do I know it's working though? Yeah. Well, I say, well, are you as tired as you used to be at 2:00 in the afternoon? Do you have to get that extra cup of coffee? I said, well, let me check that. And, check. I said, yeah, maybe not. Maybe it is working.
I love to hear about this stuff. I saw this presentation where they were using styrofoam as filler in between walls for insulation, but it also was for sound barriers as well.
Right, sound acoustic, exactly.
So
that's right.
And that was a good use of taking something that's already existing and there's abundance of it, and then they could reuse it as filler. I thought that was a great way to recycle it, recycle styrofoam.
Yeah. Right. That works. Really well, and they're able to. Looks one of the really innovative approaches that we'll see. First of all, you have a few things. One, you can think about modular construction, right? I think we're going to see much more of that, where it's built in a controlled environment and shipped to the site. So better quality, faster, and we're probably using less energy to do that. So I think modulars we'll see more of. And I know we're working on it. We work closely with Citizen M with their hotels and with the rooms, modular rooms in different parts of the world. And not every place you can do that because of code right now, but we have been able to do it in some parts of the world. But also printed buildings. And you may have seen, a few years back, we did we worked very closely with a team of with a Chinese inventor and by the big printer and contractor and ourselves. And we worked on a printed house and a printed office. And I'm like, how does this work? And they go, okay, let me take you down and show you in the model shop that we have here with our 3D printer. They're going around with the plastic, right? And it goes around till it builds that model. And exact same way. It's just a bigger printer. It goes around with this lightweight cementous material.
Yeah.
It can only have certain size because of the restrictions of the printer. It was built. We work with Thornton Tomasetti, the structural engineer here in New York, to help make sure that the thing stood up.
It's printing with concrete or with actual plastic. It's
no lightweight concrete.
Right.
Yeah. And it just kind of goes around the printer goes around the way it did with the plastic that they used when we were doing printing our 3D models.
And how long does that take to say, build a room?
I don't remember exactly, but I think the house, which was a few modules that went together, took I don't know, about 4 days to print. And then, of course, you have the knockouts, and you got to come back, and you have the knockouts to put your electricity in and your plumbing and things like that. But the building was up, and it's in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah,
it's either Abu Dhabi or Dubai. I'm not sure. Our Mideast offices worked on it, and it's there. And then we looked at, well, how would it work for an office building? And we printed a section, of an office building.
Yeah.
So look, it has a long way to go, but not so long. And I think that would be a really interesting way to do certain things. I mean, I think you could do quality. If you looked at what we did there, you could say, wow, this is great. I think I want to live here.
Right.
But you could do it, it's not just for inexpensive housing. I mean, you could do inexpensive housing, you could do affordable housing, you could do worker housing very quickly. And so I think we're going to see a lot more of this printing, and it's not just on housing. It could be on components. It could be on components in an office building.
Right. Well, I feel like in the US, we're not as experimental as places like the Middle East or China and some of these other places where they really are like, well, let's try it. Let's see what it looks like, or let's see how it's going to hold. I feel like they can take a lot more risks than they do.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, they are taking more, more risk, particularly in in the Middle East, where they're willing to try a lot of different things. But I think there's certain parts of Europe and certain companies here in the U.S. that are really looking to test things out and try something a little bit differently. I see it much more now than I did 15 years ago. where they're willing to try something different.
What cities do you think are doing the most inspired architecture right now? I mean, for me, to be honest with you, like when I was in Shanghai, I never saw high rises like that. I mean, I thought they were spectacular, and every one of them was a sculpture. And my favorite all-time building was the Shanghai Tower, which you guys did. And I'm not just saying that because you're on, but it's just a magnificent, sculpture. It's beautiful. But what's you travel the world? You guys have offices all over. What are the cities that are most inspiring in terms of architecture?
Well, I think the cities that are really testing things are in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia now is really, they have this big effort on a new city called Neom, where, I mean, it's not built yet, but we're involved in a number of the competitions, and they're really having a stretch, which is really exciting. But you start to see some of the buildings in Abu Dhabi and Dubai that are really, very, very interesting. Whether they're sustainable or not is another story, but they're very interesting on their own. Right. Same in Shanghai, in Pudong, where Shanghai Tower is, you have the super high rise district. There's only 4 or 5 towers that were allowed to be built at those heights. Right. But they're wonderful buildings. Every one of them are wonderful buildings on their own.
Yeah.
But when you start to, what inspires me is, what is the streetscape? What is the pedestrian experience? And so what gets me interested in what I love, maybe not as much the building as the experience I have as I circulate in some of the great cities in Europe. Yeah. Or but I do think northern in Scandinavia, they're doing some really interesting buildings, and it's very inspirational. And it's not just the one-offs, because there's a lot of one-off buildings in places that may not really work in the context at all. But
I feel like you see a lot of that in the Middle East. I was just in Beirut, and you see spectacular buildings, and it just doesn't, as beautiful as they are as a standalone, they just don't fit the neighborhood that they're in. So, and there is no sort of regulations for that stuff. They're like, if you have the money to build it, go to town. Which is very unfortunate, but the whole idea of conservation is a beautiful thing. And I think that's why a lot of these cities that put the effort into it, they manage to stay beautiful, because they have those restrictions, despite how, bad it might be for the investor or the developers who are trying to build that stuff. But Joe, last thoughts, what are you guys working on that you're most excited about right now? There's a number of things. I get excited about projects at different scales. So I could be very excited about a few million square foot building or interior, but I could also get very excited with our product design group on a new ADA cabinet pole. So I get excited in a bunch of areas, but and I can probably point out a number of them. But I've got to tell you that we're working with some of our wonderful clients on just rethinking about where they need to be on their office space. And there's we're doing an incredible project for Google here in Manhattan that's really exciting. Are you talking about the pier or
St. John's building?
Oh, St. John's building. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm looking at some of these life science projects that we're working on right now in Boston. Yeah. And in San Diego are really pretty interesting in what we're starting to bring to the table there.
What makes it interesting?
Well, I think the way it's starting to engage the community. I think the form and massing is interesting in terms of how we're working it within our within the requirements of very specific requirements of those type of buildings. And then we have we have our sports group. I just really excited. We're just started working on a new soccer stadium in Costa Rica for La Liga, but it's a really cool concept. Yeah. But I got it, and it's a wonderful form. You could do that, But what's really exciting and what we're working with the client on is to this new area, because it's out a few miles outside of the city where there's not much development. So there's a lot of land. How will the city grow to the west where this stadium's going to go, and what kind of uses? So the master planning of that has been is really been very, very exciting. One of the projects that we did the master planning and design for, and then there was a local architect that did the construction drawings, is just about finished in construction. And I've seen some photographs, and it's the Galata port in Turkey.
Yeah.
The cruise ships come in, and it's that whole district that we had designed, and it's just about finished construction. And I'm really excited to see that, because we're talking about, an old city up top on the hill. So we created this new very creative district, but it had to work really well for the people. The climate dictated, how far away the buildings were going to be, so you could have some shade and natural, passive climate conditions that we created. So those are projects that are highly exciting. There's a handful that I can't speak about right now that are in design. We are doing and I think I better not say. It's done with design and it's going into construction, but it's impacting a town in the Southeast, because they are a major player in the Southeast, and they are not only doing a brand new campus headquarters in the downtown area, but they are really paying attention to creating a much better environment for the people, with incredible parks, bike lanes that now are going to connect throughout the city, creating spaces in their own buildings that can be used for community uses as well. But the buildings are mass timber buildings, all of them, and they're going to be wonderful. This
is a college campus or a business?
It's an office. It's a corporate campus.
Oh, wow, that sounds amazing. Well, Joe, we went over our time, but this was really interesting. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to everybody who tuned in. Bye, everyone.